Hello, everyone. Here's a rewritten tale inspired by my all-time favorite book, and I'll entitle it Love Unbound.
Chapter 1.
Philip Whitworth, a distinguished president of the sprawling Whitworth Enterprises, looked up from his paperwork, drawn by the swift and purposeful footsteps sunk into the luxurious oriental carpet stretching across his opulent presidential office. Relaxing into his maroon leather swivel chair, he fixed his attention on the approaching vice president. Well, he inquired impatiently, have they announced who the low bidder is? With a determined air, the vice president leaned forward, resting his clenched fist on the polished surface of Philip's mahogany desk. Sinclair was the low bidder. He spat out with frustration. National Motors is giving him the contract to provide all the radios for the cars they manufacture because Nick Sinclair beat our price by a lousy $30,000. Drawing in a furious breath, he expelled it in a hiss. That bastard won a $50 million contract away from us by cutting our price a fraction of 1%. Philip Whitworth's aristocratic jawline exhibited only a slight hardening, betraying the anger rolling within him as he said, "That's the fourth time this year that he's won a major contract away from us. Quite a coincidence, isn't it?" Coincidence, the vice president echoed bitterly. It's no damn coincidence. And you know it, Philip, someone in my division is on Nick Sinclair's payroll. Some bastard must be spying on us, discovering the amount that goes into our sealed bid, then feeding the information to Sinclair so that he can undercut us by a few dollars. Only 6 men who work for me knew the amount we were going to bid on this job. One of those 6 men is our spy. Philip leaned even further back into his chair until his silvered hair grazed at the high leather back. You've had security investigations conducted on all 6 of those men. And all we learned was that 3 of them are cheating on their wives. Then the investigations weren't thorough enough. The vice president straightened, running a hand through his hair in exasperation before letting his arm drop. "Look, Philip, I realize Sinclair is your stepson, but you're going to have to do something to stop him. He's out to destroy you." Philip Whitworth's eyes turned icy, the passion in his voice momentarily suppressed. "I have never acknowledged him as my stepson, nor does my wife acknowledge him as her son. Now, precisely what do you propose I do to stop him?" "Put a spy of your own in his company. Find out who his contact here is. I don't care what you do, but for God's sake, something..." The vice president implored, his concern etched across his face. Philip's attempt to reply was abruptly interrupted by the harsh buzzing of the intercom on his grand desk, and he instinctively jabbed his finger at the button. "Yes, what is it, Helen?" "I'm sorry to interrupt you, sir." His secretary's voice came through the intercom, "but there's a Miss Lauren Danner here. She says she has an appointment with you to discuss employment." Philip let out an irritable sigh, slightly annoyed by the interruption. "She does," he responded. "I agreed to interview her for a position with us. Tell her I'll see her in a few minutes." So with that, he flicked the button off and returned his attention to the vice president, who, though preoccupied with the pressing matter at hand, was regarding Philip with curiosity. "Since when are you conducting personnel interviews, Philip?" As it inquired, genuinely intrigued. "It's a courtesy interview," Philip explained with a hint of impatience. "Her father is a sure-tail relative of mine, a 5th or 6th cousin, as I recall. And Dinner's one of those distant relatives my mother unearthed years ago, when she was passionately researching her book on our extensive family tree. Every time she stumbled upon a new batch of potential relatives, she would graciously invite them to our house. Nice little weekend visits so that she could delve into their ancestry, ascertain if they were genuinely related, and decide if they were worthy of mention in her meticulously crafted book. My mother had a peculiar fascination with a family's lineage, and she would meticulously document every discovered connection. Consequently, we end up with quite a vast network of distant relatives scattered across the country, connected by intricate branches of the Whitworth family tree." So the vice president listened attentively, impressed by the elaborate lengths Philip's mother went to in preserving their family's history. "It sounds like quite an undertaking," he remarked. As Philip affirmed, a touch of nostalgia in his voice. "My mother was a remarkable woman, and her dedication to Our family's heritage left a lasting impact on me, so as a token of respect for her memory, I occasionally indulge in these courtesy interviews, though I must admit they seldom lead to any significant employment decisions. Smiled wryly, acknowledging the rather unusual practice. With a sense of admiration for Philip's family-oriented perspective, the vice president nodded understandingly. Well, it's a noble way to honor her legacy, even if the employment prospects might be limited. Indeed, Philip agreed. Now let's get back to the matter at hand. The Sinclair predicament needs immediate attention. With that, the two men delve back into the pressing issue of corporate espionage and the steps they needed to take to protect their company from further harm. Danner was a professor at a Chicago university. He couldn't come, so he sent his wife a concert pianist. And his daughter in his place. Mrs. Danner was killed in an automobile accident a few years later, and I never heard from him after that until last week when he called and asked me to interview his daughter, Lauren, for a job. He said there's nothing suitable for her in Fenster, Missouri, where he's living now. Rather presumptuous of him to call you, wasn't it? The vice president remarked, raising an eyebrow. Philip's expression filled with a bored resignation. I'll give the girl a few minutes of my time and then send her packing. We don't have a position for anyone with a college degree in music. Even if we did, I wouldn't hire Lauren Danner. I've never met a more irritating, outrageous, ill-mannered, homely child in my life. He was about 9 years old, chubby, with freckles and a mop of reddish. His hair that looked as if it was never properly combed, and if she were hideous horn-rimmed eyeglasses, and so help me God, that child looked down her nose at us. Meanwhile, Philip Whitworth's secretary discreetly glanced at the young woman who was now seated across from her. He lay in a crisp navy blue suit and a stylish white ascot-style blouse. The woman exuded an air of elegance. Her honey blonde hair was gracefully tied up in an elegant chignon with soft tendrils framing a face of flawless, vivid beauty. Her cheekbones were slightly high, her nose small, and her chin delicately rounded, but it was her eyes that captivated attention. Beneath the arch of her brows, long curly lashes fringed eyes that were a startling, luminous turquoise blue. Mr. Whitworth will see you in a few minutes, the secretary said politely, careful not to stare, but finding it hard to avert her gaze from the woman's striking features. Lauren Danner looked up from the magazine she was trying to distract herself with and offered a warm smile. He said courteously, then quickly gazed back down, attempting to control the nervous dread swirling within her as she prepared to confront Philip Whitworth face to face. Unbeknownst to Philip, the seemingly ordinary interview he was about to conduct would not only challenge his preconceived notions about Lauren Danner, but would also set in motion a series of events that would leave a lasting impact on both of their lives. The collision of their worlds, filled with corporate intrigue and unexpected romance, was about to soon unfold in ways neither of them could have anticipated. The painful memory of her 2-day stay at the magnificent Grosse Pointe mansion had not dulled in the 14 years, and Lauren vividly recalled how the entire Whitworth family, and even the servants, treated her and her mother with insulting scorn during their time there. As Lauren sat nervously in the secretary's office, the sudden buzz of the phone sent a jolt through her already anxious system. How had she ended up in this impossible predicament? If only she had known in advance that her father would call Philip Whitworth, she could have dissuaded him. But by the time she found out the call had already been made and this interview was set in stone, she tried to object. And when she tried to object, her father calmly reminded her that Philip Whitworth owed them a favor, and unless Lauren could provide compelling reasons against going to Detroit, he expected her to keep the appointment he arranged. She placed an unread magazine on her lap and let out a sigh of frustration. She could have told her father about the way the Whitworths treated them 14 years ago, but right now money was his primary concern. The economic recession had hit Missouri hard, and the rejection of a school tax increase led to thousands of teachers, including Lauren's father, being laid off. His desperate search for a job, combined with the stress, culminated in a massive heart attack that changed the course of their lives. However, Lauren knew deep down that she was already on the brink of changing her own path. Despite her musical talent and a master's degree in music, she had come to realize that she lacked the unwavering ambition and dedication required to succeed as a concert pianist. Her heart yearned for more from life, beyond the confines of her music. The endless hours of study, practice, and sacrifices had left little room for relaxation and enjoyment. From the time she reached 23, she had traveled extensively for competitions, but barely experienced the cities she visited. Countless acquaintances came and went, but meaningful connections were fleeting due to her demanding schedule. Scholarships and awards brought recognition, but financial struggles persisted. Despite investing so much of her life in music, the burden of her father's illness and mounting medical bills forced her to make the difficult decision she had been avoiding. In the face of his job loss and health deterioration, Lauren knew it was her turn to support him just as he had supported her throughout her musical journey. Lauren sat in the plush reception area that a weight of responsibility in her shoulders. She was desperate for a job and money, and the prospect of working for a large manufacturing corporation like this one felt strange and disorienting. Despite her reservations, she knew that if the pay was good enough, she would take any job offered to her. Job opportunities with room for growth were scarce in her hometown of Fenster, Missouri, and the few available positions paid poorly compared to those in major cities like Detroit. The secretary informed her that Mr. Whitworth was ready to see her, and Lauren followed her to his office. Stepping inside, she tried to mask her nervousness, drawing on her experience as a performer to maintain an outward appearance of quiet poise. Philip Whitworth, looking astonished, rose from his seat to greet her. Lauren extended her hand politely, hoping he wouldn't recall their encounter from years ago. "You probably don't remember me, Mr. Whitworth," she began, "but I'm Lauren Danner." Philip's handshake was firm, and he responded with a touch of dry amusement. "As a matter of fact, I remember you very well, Lauren. You were rather, unforgettable child." Lauren smiled, surprised by his candid response. "That's very kind of you. You might have said outrageous instead of unforgettable." With this light-hearted exchange, a tentative truce was established, and Philip motioned for her to take a seat in front of his desk. As she handed him her resume, he couldn't help but study her face, remarking on the striking resemblance she had to her mother. "You look almost exactly like her," he observed. She was an extraordinarily beautiful woman. Feeling a bit dazed by the unexpected turn in the conversation, Lauren found it disconcerting to hear him speak fondly of her mother, considering his outwardly cold demeanor in their previous encounter. As he perused her resume, Lauren took the opportunity to glance around his grand office, admiring the stately splendor that surrounded Philip Whitworth, the ruler of his corporate empire. She couldn't help but notice his attractiveness despite his age and how he exuded an aura of wealth and power that left an impression on her. As the interview progressed, Lauren realized that her longstanding prejudice against him might have been unfair. He didn't seem like the cold, conceited snob she remembered from her childhood. Instead, he appeared to be a distinguished, elegant socialite with courteous manners and a sense of humor. Perhaps, after all these years, it was time to reevaluate her opinion of Philip Whitworth. As Philip Whitworth turned to the second page of Lauren's resume, she found herself caught off guard. Like, what, is she suddenly having a change of heart about him? She pondered this uncomfortably. It was true that he was being courteous and kind, but was she letting herself be influenced by his wealth and sophistication? He pointed out that her music degree held no value in the business world, and Lauren acknowledged this. She explained her decision to abandon her career as a pianist due to her family's financial circumstances, including her father's health issues. Noticing her business courses in college, Philip asked about her shorthand and typing skills. Lauren's secretarial background was impressive. She wasn't keen on the idea of becoming a secretary. He assured her that executive secretaries were highly paid and in demand, providing valuable insight into the corporation's inner workings. Philip then revealed the reason for his interest in Lauren. His company was facing corporate espionage from a competitor, Cinco, and he wanted her to apply for a secretarial position at Cinco to identify the spy. Reluctantly, Lauren agreed to take the job and nodded to his proposal. Philip offered an attractive salary, promising to supplement it if Cinco's offer fell short. Additionally, if Lauren could uncover vital information about the spy within 6 months, she'd receive a $10,000 bonus. Feeling uncertain about the intrigue involved, Lauren finally accepted the offers due to her overwhelming financial responsibilities. Before she left, Philip called Cinco and arranged an appointment for Lauren, providing her with a secret phone number to reach him. Despite her hesitation, he insisted she stay at his house during her visit. So when Lauren left his office, Philip called his son Carter and shared his plan to deal a blow to Nick Sinclair's armor, mentioning Lauren Danner's involvement. So as we conclude this chapter, I look forward to reconnecting with you in chapter 2. Farewell for now.